Jay, where were you born? Where were you born and raised?
I was born in the Yucatan Peninsula in a town called Chicxulub, uh, 1980. I was raised between there and the U.S. and during my parents' very tumultuous divorce. I came to the U.S. in 1986 in Los Angeles during the midst of the crack epidemic. So quite the culture shock from the tropics to, South Central Los Angeles.
Describe a little bit what your home life was like.
Well, when I was little, before my father started working for certain people, before my brother was born, what I remember was we lived in a hut that had hay for a roof and mud walls, and the floor was dirt, but it had actual a carpet over it. We were happy, had a little pet monkey and some goats and chickens and shit like that, and I'd go with my dad to cast the net for fishing, as the sun was rising. I just keep remembering the turquoise blue waters, so that's something I always fall back on, and and then, things happen, a man's got to make a living and stuff, and then my dad just started making a lot of moves and a lot of money, and a lot of things started to happen, and I mean, without having to get too much into it, anybody that knows anything, that's like the main corridor. So it's either going to Miami via boat or it's getting crossed over through the southern US-Mexican border. So right at the epicenter of all that getting started, right around the time when the Colombians gave the Mexicans the reins, they were no longer muling. Now they had the right to have their own, industries, if you will. So
what do you remember when you moved to LA? Do you remember the journey?
oh my God, I remember when it changed from what I like to call the Mexican polka music, banda, to like hip hop on the radio, And I was like, oh, I like this, because I never really liked the other boom, 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 So I feel like that's, fine, but that wasn't my thing. Up until then, I never really heard music except for what my father would listen to, like Pink Floyd or, Bob Marley and stuff like that, so. But yeah. Those were fond memories, up until, having to come to this country and then, not only culture shock, but having to be the first one in my family to learn English and then help my mom find work, translating for her until she actually learned it, and then teaching my little brother English as well. We lived on Amtrak for about 2 years, and then we ended up Salt Lake City, Utah, Arizona, El Paso, Texas, Colorado Springs. We lived, and then my mom met my stepdad on Amtrak.
What, real quick, what does that mean? You lived on Amtrak? I'm not sure.
Well, we basically were like for 2 years moving everywhere, staying moving. We had to stay moving. She couldn't let.
Talking about the train?
Yeah.
Like you guys were living on Amtrak?
Pretty much, because my mom was like convinced, because my dad had, the money and the people that were searching for me and my brother, so there was quite the childhood, man, with some of the things that I've seen and had happen. So, but yeah.
Are you open to sharing some of those?
Sure. Like, what do you want to know?
I don't know. What comes to mind?
Let's see. I remember when my dad started building the roads down there when he came into money, and he would have friends over that, I was a little boy and stuff, and my dad's a big soccer freak, or was when he was alive. And he'd take pictures and stuff. And I remember in the Caribbean, they have, like their own soccer nationals or whatever. And it's all veterans that play, and it's taken very serious, that's where, guys that are in certain industries or whatever, they go and they meet other guys, use that as a cover, and they basically negotiate terms and whatnot.
So when you say certain industries, my interpretation, are you talking like drug industries?
Yeah, so like, yeah, and these guys, and they take the game very serious. It's almost like if we were to go back in time and watch the Aztecs play against, rival tribes, like people end up losing lives, over that, But with them, it was more, like negotiations of, which routes are to be taken in case, like U.S. Coast Guard or, like, I don't know, because they were just starting to learn about like EC2 satellites or whatever. So,
They shared this information while playing soccer.
Yeah. Yeah, my father was mentioned in a book because they never found out who he was. It was about a meeting that happened, and this is before Chapo became Chapo. And Chapo was young, and ambitious. My father being a Uruguayan and having diplomatic immunity passed down through his father, my grandfather. So he was utilized for that and basically placed in key positions because when boats and planes can't make it to their destinations, the Yucatan Peninsula was utilized as an emergency go-to, and then other routes and stuff one way or another, So what I remember was always going with him to places and, people meeting and talking and whatnot. And then I remember when one Christmas, my mom looked out the window and he had bought her a couple of cars, and then for her birthday gave her like a restaurant and a couple boutiques, and he was putting people to work legit. A lot of the women were seamstresses, the Mayan women down there, and a lot of the guys, they were working, doing other things and stuff, not necessarily in the life of vice, but he was well liked, and then he started putting money into building the roads down there, so he had kind of like carte blanche to basically run red lights because he's the guy that built the roads, and they knew him and stuff, and he was very well liked and whatnot. And I remember going to these crazy, like, you would not believe what they would look like, beautiful like mansions out in the middle of like these long dirt roads that overlooked the ocean, and then you'd see guys on yachts and then little boats all of a sudden pull up to the dock, and it was all just for a party for a couple of hours, and friends of my dad, some Argentine dudes, but then the rest were like Colombian guys and stuff. My mom had pictures of my dad with all these guys, so.
And you mentioned a little brother. Was he with you as well?
In 1984 when he was born, yeah. So, he was definitely, by me, the older brother, he was welcomed, and I was excited, because here's this little being I can teach things to and whatnot. So, and we get into things and whatnot, There's a lot of things in my life that were sweet memories, and a lot were bittersweet. So, All right, any other questions?
Yeah. So you traveled around. What brought you to Seattle?
Basically, my mother meeting my stepfather on the train on Amtrak. 9 months from when they met, they got married. I remember my first day at school up here,
How old were you?
uh, like 8 or 9, I think. And it was during a blizzard that was happening. I don't know if I was 88 or 89, but I remember this redhead bus driver lady with green eyes named Stacy, overweight broad, man. You know, looked like she was living in a double wide, that kind. You know, watches NASCAR. You know, rednecky. You know, and she pulls up. You know, all the kids get in and stuff, and she looks at me. And she goes, "Whoa, wait there, Paco," and she goes, "You have a green card." Now, when I went to LA when we were kids, in that school system, you know, you wear these like strings that have like the bus number and stuff, you know, a card. That's what I thought that she meant. I didn't know that she meant anything about legal status. I'm just a kid, you know. And I said, I looked down. I said, no, and she's like, then you ain't getting on this bus. And my mom had gone to work, and basically I was left out in the cold weather, winter, until like 8 at night. Yeah.
So you never went to school. Never.
No, I didn't go to school that day, and my mom found me outside, you know, in a little makeshift igloo that I made to stay warm. And basically, I told my mom what had happened, and she was fucking furious. And the next day, she's like, point her out. And my mom almost snatched her out of the bus at the elementary school, Viewlance. And it was just a big, you know, back then, you know, if that would have happened nowadays, that'd have been a major lawsuit, you know, getting paid. Instead, it was arguments, and then the vice principal and the principal, and that lady tried to insult my mom, you know, calling her beaner and this and that. So, you know, I grew up with a lot of, you know, from both sides, you know, because down in Mexico, because I'm mixed, because my father's European, Uruguayan, you know, and then up here, you know, because I'm a beaner, you know, so.
So, what part of Seattle did you grow up in?
I grew up over there off of 98th and Linden, off of 100th and Aurora, and when I was 15, I got emancipated because I was getting into trouble with certain friends and alliances and whatnot. So my stepfather was like worried that they could be held accountable. So they had me emancipated, and I always remember him saying, you know, my house, my rules. So, you know, by 14, you know, probably younger than that, I was already doing things to get money, and then I just got fed up and left, and, you know, didn't look back. And
What age?
uh, first car was at 14. It was a Monte Carlo, and
You moved out of the house at 14? To where? I mean, what did you do at 14?
I had this garage where I had this deal with this old man because nobody knew that I had a car, and I had this. It was like 83 Super Sport Monte Carlo that I got on a deal from somebody, and I didn't want it taken, but because I couldn't have a license just yet, so I was looking for the guy that could help me do the paperwork, you know, or whatever. But it was mine. I paid for it, you know, with the money I had made from dealing weed and mushrooms and stuff. So, and I slept in the car and, you know, in the garage, and then I had friends and whatnot. But then later on, I ended up meeting my foster parents up in Ballard, and they used to be civil rights violations investigators for the federal government. But when I met them, they were working at the post office. They had been retired. but I used to deal to their kids, and then I started dealing to them, and then they were like, "Where do you sleep? Where do you go?" I was like, "I live in my car." They're like, "You got a car?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm out here doing my thing, so." And it's pretty independent, I mean, so.
So they were like, when you say foster parents,
That's what we basically agreed that they would be, yeah, but
in.
nothing with paperwork or anything like that. But there was another kid that actually looks like my friend over here, who I called my brother, that passed away along with their kid not too long ago. That was an actual, adopted, or whatnot. But so, and they taught me things like, never fear the cops, never fear the courts, you know how to talk to them or at them, never let them intimidate you, and don't put up with their BS, their lies, or anything like that. But always, be mindful of your adversaries. Not necessarily all adversaries will become enemies. So I always love listening to like NPR with the old man, and I had another older gentleman that I looked towards for as a father. He was an ex-Vietnam vet, and this man used to help me sell my weed to all his friends and stuff, and he helped me out, and I helped him out, and I made sure he always had quality, and you know, and for many years, that friendship, grew and developed in those ways, and you know, so was life like that.
So
But I stayed all over Seattle, basically like Alki, West Seattle, White Center, Delridge, California Ave, Beacon Hill. I stayed in a lot of hoods, because that's where the action was, and I would come up here because this is where the money was, So, and yeah, that's how
you in contact with? We'll start with your little brother.
kind of, man. He had turned out to be, pretty jaded and selfish. And as of recent, he just really proved it by basically screwing me out of what is my birthright, the inheritance money, and playing these little games and stuff. And when I really needed it, and he knows that I had just got done doing a bid in the feds, and wanting to see my daughters, because now it's been 11 years, no contact. So that kind of tends to do something, and I want to do something about it. But then my life has always been, really extremes, extreme nothing happens, or extreme a lot of things are hitting me all at once. So I had to learn how to just try to maintain level, monotone spirit, like try not to let it phase me too much.
What you said you have two daughters. How old are they?
Now, the youngest one is 15, the oldest one is 17. Last time I seen them was in 2009, Father's Day, when I had to find out, unfortunately, that the baby's mom was stepping out on me in front of the kids, because she met me. I was, I had money, and I guess I was an exciting person, but as women, how they're trained genetically, man, they seek out comfort and security, and a guy that can provide that, so.
And your daughters know where you are? You know where they are? So you got like lost contact completely.
Yeah, I think they're still up here. I'll find them eventually, and the paperwork will prove everything that I'm saying is truth, and she'll have to understand that, you know, some people do certain things and others don't, and you know, and that's one thing. You know, things happen and you try and you do your best, and you know, and I was betrayed by somebody that basically didn't want to pay a debt I let them slide on for over a decade, and I made them start paying it, and they freaked out, and even though they were wanted, they went directly to SPD.
Hi, I'm just doing an interview.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So yeah, anything else?
Yeah, one more question. You know, what would you say to the people of Seattle who see where you're living and
The Seattle I remember was less gentrified. It was more hardy, you know. I remember Fremont was before Susie Burke ended up buying up everything or whatnot. You know, they call her Miss Fremont or whatever. It was more, you know, an artist's, you know, like hub. You know, I worked with people there that blew glass and whatnot, and you know, I remember Seattle being more wholesome. You know,
yeah.
well, when I got out of my extended stay at Club Fed, I came out and just seeing all the tents, and I was like, whoa. And my friend was telling me, she's like, my kid thinks this is camping, and I had to learn exactly what had happened in my absence and stuff. And then, you know, I was working and whatnot, but then an injury that had occurred prior, many years before, started acting up again, and a couple other things happened, and next thing you know, after a while, you know, you get burnt out, and you know, you just need a little bit of a break and whatnot.
Nice job, I found James. If you guys hear from him.
All right, brother. And yeah, I mean, what I would say to the people, the original Seattleites or these the yuppies?
maybe just to the city in general? You know, I think the question's kind of, you know, we're all neighbors here, right?
Yeah, you know, I mean, don't judge the books by the covers, you know. You don't really know people until you get to know people. And when you live life through fear, lenses, goggles, whatever, you know, you really end up shorting yourself an experience that could help you grow to understand truly, you know, because hindsight is 2020. You know, you gotta really take the time, you know, to understand why things are the way that they are. They're not the way that they are because of what somebody says, because there's always their truth, your truth, and then the actual truth, you know. So for anybody that is that values themselves an intellectual or just, you know, someone with common sense and decency, you know, it's not all it looks like. You know, there's a lot of things that almost, I want to say, almost were predetermined by certain actions that were taken, not just by the Seattle Police Department or the Seattle City Council and stuff, but also people in the communities. You know, we all have a tendency to affect one another. Me, I try to, you know, be just the best me I can be, you know. Like, I'm not gonna be a cliche and be like keeping it real or anything like that. I'm just, you know, who I am today is, you know, maybe not who I will become, you know, tomorrow, you know. I'm just trying my best and, you know, seeing, you know, what happens and how it goes, you know. There's a lot of really interesting people walking around here that people would not know that they were who they were. You know, I met a lady named Michelle downtown that knows everybody, and she used to be, I didn't believe it until I saw the pictures. She used to be one of Ronald Reagan's security detail for the Secret Service. And she was a lieutenant colonel or whatever in the military or whatnot, you know, and now she lives at the Josephine building downtown, you know. I mean, people go through a lot of things, you know. I've learned from my experience in life not to allow my position to blind me to what it really is, and I'm thankful for my experiences for allowing me to have the mindset to actually be able to know how to placate certain types of people and then know how to actually be okay and relate to others, you know? Because now what I'm seeing is, it's crazy, man, you know, like the city, you know, the haves and have-nots are two extremes, you know, opposing one another. And, you know, what I don't get is this. How are the people that work in the businesses that the entrepreneurs create, or the wealthy or whatnot, supposed to have a life? They can't even get a living wage to build and save up when they're just working class slaves, man, you know? I mean, how are you supposed to enjoy life? And, you know, things like that actually affect people and thus make people have certain mindsets and take certain actions and directions, you know? So before anybody stands there and tries to point the finger as to who's to blame and whatnot, you know, what are you really doing to help the situation out, you know? And to do it without fear-mongering or hatred, you know? And I'm not saying, you know, let's hold hands across the country or whatever. I'm just saying, be civil and be, you know, be legit, man, because, you know, if this is really America, you know, doesn't everybody have a right to, you know, coexist? You know, I mean, try not to be as jaded and one-sided and, or you know, single-sided or short-sighted, you know, just, you know, give life a chance to show you things, you know, because you might end up missing an opportunity on a best friend or, you know, a love or, you know, or someone that can change your life for the better, you know, enriching it, you know. I mean, life is about experiences. So, you know, I've learned not to, even before I ended up on the streets here temporarily, I guess because of my experience, you know, in life, how I lived, I've learned not to, you know, shit on people, you know, but then also I can understand people's frustrations, you know. I can relate to a lot of it. But there's ways to get what you want without having to treat others bad, you know?
Yeah.
So it just takes thinking and attention to details, you know? That's what life is pay attention to details and you'll get to see what unfolds, you know? Hell, you might even be able to make it to what you want.
Hey man, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
some good words.
Appreciate
man.
you.